All right, we are live, and I'm very excited to be interviewing today's guest, who's all the way on the other side of the world. I'm in Canada, she is in Australia. On today's episode, I interview a yoga educator, a writer, an artist, author of these books, Philosophy on the Mat, and her new book, Buddhism for Yogis. Since her yoga journey began in the late 1980s, she's been a yoga teacher, a yoga trainer, and a mentor to many. Today, she supports yoga teachers through her weekly Yoga Teachers blog and continues to deepen her spiritual connection through art, study, and practice. Welcome to the Winner Circle, Barbara Courtille.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I got stumbled upon your book, Philosophy on the Mat. I was reading someone's review on Goodreads about a completely different, a different book, but I just really enjoyed like his review and what he wrote. I was like, oh, I wonder what else this guy's reading. And then he left like a really great review of your book, and I said like, oh, this what it sounds like it is. Incorporating the different yoga philosophies and how to incorporate that into our classes, which I think is so important to take and expand the yoga practice well beyond the physical postures, well beyond the asanas. So I got it and I've been loving it, and I reached out to you and now here you are. So I'm excited to explore your journey to write these books and just your 30 plus years in yoga.
Oh, I'm really happy that you came across it by a review because one of the things that is quite difficult when you write a book is getting reviews. I get so many people saying, love your book, you'll love your book. And I say, can you please leave me a review? And very few people do. So it just goes to show reviews work. So if you're out there and you've read my book and you love it, please leave me a review.
Right on. Well, I'll be sure to write a review for you as well, Barbara. These conversations are always very uplifting, inspiring, and empowering, and as such, the questions kind of lead us in that direction. This first one in particular, there's a lot of going on in the world. I don't want to focus on that. What I want to focus on is your story. So, what do you love, Barbara, about your personal world right now, right here and now? What do you love about your personal world?
I feel like I'm in a very nice place in my life where I have a lot of freedom to really explore my my spiritual life. I'm at
Mm-hmm.
that age, like I'm in my late
Mm-hmm.
50s, and it's that beautiful, what they call in yoga, the forest dweller years, the years when there's less responsibility, there's more time, and it's a time which is really beautiful. People always go on about how terrible aging is. For me, it's the opposite because it's a time in my life, as I said, there's a lot more freedom, a lot more space. Even though I know I don't have as much time, the quality of time is so much richer than it has been when I was younger and I had all those other things that you have when you're younger. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel very lucky to be at this stage of life, and I feel like it's a stage where I can give back, and giving back is so rewarding and also part of the spiritual journey. So yeah, it's a really, really great time for me right now.
Very happy for you. Thanks for sharing that. I'm excited to delve into a few things you talked about there, but let's start with freedom. Yoga is said to be the discipline of freedom. When did you realize that you were free, and how do you continually cultivate and grow that freedom in your personal now?
Yeah, I think I said I was more free. I wouldn't say I'm completely free because there's always the mind to deal with. There's
Uh-huh.
always the voice, and the only way to deal with that is through meditation or meditative practices of some sort. For me, I
Uh-huh.
particularly love sound healing. That is my most powerful meditation of all the meditations that I've practiced and taught because it resonates with me. But as
Mm-hmm.
I've often say, is find what works for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So having stillness and plugging into, well, this is very interesting because what is it that we're plugging into? In Vedanta, they would tell us it's the Atman, The Buddhists would tell us, no, there's no such thing. It's emptiness. It's letting go of that idea of self. So I don't know. I explore these things in my meditation. I tend to plug into sound, as I said, or nada, that idea. When I plug into those sounds in my ears, both my ears, I feel like, to me, that's Brahman, that's universal consciousness. Whether it
Mm-hmm.
is or not, I don't know. But that's what works for me. And when I plug into that, what happens is everything else fades away. All
Mm-hmm.
the mind stuff, all the things that we worry about, all the things that we think about, it's kind of like getting perspective, I guess. Really like Garuda, the bird, looking down from high above and just going, that is so small. Or when you go somewhere in Australia, and you have this in the States as well, these beautiful, I did a road trip in California, went to the desert and all these amazing places where you feel tiny, where you feel so
Mm-hmm.
small. But instead of that being a negative, it's actually so empowering on a spiritual level, because you realize how small all that mind stuff is and how insignificant it is. And that is just so helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how does your sound healing look like? You put on headphones, or what does your sound healing meditation like look like?
No, I do. I have sound bowls and I have an ocean drum and a rain stick. I have a whole heap of instruments because I used to do a lot of sound healing workshops. So I
Okay.
have them myself, or I will go to other people's sound healings. So I go to a local studio, they have bowls there, and I'm always encouraging them to have more sound. So when we have shavasana at the end and meditation at the end, then often they will incorporate sound. And that just gets you so much deeper, so much more quickly. And when I used to teach meditation in public spaces and sometimes in corporate spaces, I often found that sound was the thing that got people in quick and deep, much quicker
Mm-hmm.
than any other form of meditation. For a lot of people, it doesn't work for everyone. Some people can't stand it. Some people, the
Mm-hmm.
vibration just does not, like, I've had people walk out. So,
Yeah.
as I said, you just got to find your thing. But for me, it's really powerful.
And how do you instruct people to drop in using sound? Like, what does that look like for you? How do you drop in so easily using the sound? Or do you just let the sound bring you there itself and just allow it to unfold naturally?
Yeah, there's not a lot of talking in sound. The less talking, the better. I used to work with the chakras, so using instruments for the lower chakras, then moving up. So,
Mm-hmm.
like drums and so forth, you start with drums and very earthy kind of sounds, then you move up to the heart with string instruments, and then you move up with chimes to get up in the upper chakras and to the top, and then you bring them back down so that by the end
Mm-hmm.
of the session, if you're teaching, then people are feeling grounded and they're not all up there in the air. So I used to use that method. You can also use the koshas, so from going from the physical inward and then back out. So there's lots of little roadmaps that you can use. You can use the three tenyans. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that you can do, but it needs, the thing with sound is it's subtle. So don't go around banging your drums, or sometimes with the didgeridoo they come right up to you and it's very, I mean, personally, that does not work for me. I studied
Mm-hmm.
sound healing with a wonderful teacher called Shervin Boloorian, who teaches in all over the world. He's Iranian, I think, but I did my training with him in Bali, and he's one of
Okay.
those people that has a million instruments and he can play everything, but he reveres each instrument and he's so gentle, and it's just like a spiritual experience watching him play his instruments. And so I've learnt a lot from him about the subtlety, because you're working with the subtle body. You're not working with, handstands and all that kind of stuff. So it
Mm-hmm.
needs to be gentle for it to work. And you don't want to interrupt people's experience with too much talking. That's one of my pet peeves in meditation and yoga in general. Like, you don't need to talk so much. It disrupts,
Mm-hmm.
it gets the mind fluctuating, and we're trying to get it to still.
The cessation of the mind stuff, yes. So a question I like to ask everyone when I first bring them on to these conversations, so that me and the listeners get to know them a bit better, is pertains to your personal mission. You have a lot of titles that I introduced you as: a yoga educator, a yoga student, a yoga trainer, a mentor, a writer, an artist, an author. Through all these different hats that you wear, and then there's more, what is the overarching mission that guides you in all that you do?
I think art is my first and biggest love and the thing that I've done throughout. But my art, my creative practice is a spiritual practice. So even though it feels like I'm doing a lot of things, all of them are connected to my spiritual practice. They're just different
Hmm.
facets. It just comes out in different ways. And because I'm a creative person, I do like to do different things. But
Yeah.
it's all connected to, okay, why am I here? How can I plug into this? How can I make it meaningful? Because I'm not here for a long time. And even though I'm fully on board with the whole concept of reincarnation, there's still a lesson for this lifetime that I'd like to fulfill as best as I can. Because if I
Hmm.
don't, then I'll be repeating it again.
Yeah. So let's hit rewind and let's just kind of go back in time and let's look at the early seeds of this spiritual inquisitiveness and inquiry, and how has that evolved?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I had it at a very young age. I used to say things out of nowhere that weren't connected to my society or my family. I'd say things like, we're born alone, we die alone. And then I think, where did that come from? Like, I always have a very strong sense of, and also a lot of about the power of the mind. I remember when I was very young, I used to really, I mean, now we talk about it all the time, but when I grew up, it wasn't really a thing that people spoke about. So I feel like it's from another lifetime. You know, it's from a previous, this is like ongoing work that I'm
Hmm.
carrying
Hmm.
through. I don't know what
Hmm.
stage of the journey that I'm on, but it feels very much like, oh yeah, I've been here and I'm continuing this journey.
Hmm. And one way you channeled this, I think probably the first way, is through your art.
Yeah, yeah. Very
And
much
what
so.
did that look like?
Being in the zone. I'm an only child, so I grew up with a lot of alone time, channeled into art making, which is my favorite thing to do to this day. Like I can just get completely lost in
Hmm.
my own little creative world. And yeah, that probably comes from spending a lot of time alone.
Hmm. Would you say when you get lost in that art, would you be living that eight limb of yoga? Is that a channel into the samadhi state when you're painting? Is that how is that a way for you drop into that
I
state of
don't
being?
go, I wouldn't say that I go through the 8 steps because that's very cerebral and this is not a cerebral, it's a little bit like the sound.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's something that you drop in. You drop in without conscious, like you're not thinking.
Okay.
Because if you start thinking, then you're doing something else.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
At
Whereas
least,
in yoga,
at least that's what it is for me. I'm not saying that's how it should be. It's just my
uh,
experience. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Whereas you feel in yoga, you just build your way up to that samadhi. You can't just drop in. I guess it's a gradual entry into that state.
Yeah, I think I tend to work with my yoga practice. I use the koshas probably or the chakras more than Patanjali's system uh,
Okay.
for me personally because
Okay.
I'm more into the tantric aspect of yoga rather than the classical Patanjali Yoga Sutras.
Yeah.
Me personally, which I find
Hmm.
more intellectual and more, yeah, it's just I prefer to work with energy and the subtle
Okay.
body. Yeah.
Okay. So is that how you started with yoga, through the tantric lineage, or did you start with the classical Ashtanga path? Like, yeah, what was your entry into yoga? What did that look like?
No, I started with Iyengar yoga.
Okay.
Uh, Only because I was living with my partner at the time. He was into it. He was also Buddhist, and he took me to a yoga class. It happened to be an Iyengar class. And back in the 80s, there was a lot of Iyengar yoga in Sydney where I lived.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and I didn't know any different. Like I didn't even know that there were different types of yogas and what they meant. I didn't know anything. I just turned up. And that the Iyengar system, as you know, is very strict. And so it was a bit like ballet. I remember going to ballet when I was very young and remember thinking it was going to be all these fluffy, nice stuff, and it was actually horrible. This
Yeah.
horrible woman screaming at me, and Iyengar was a little bit the same. So I didn't go back to that teacher.
Okay.
But yeah, I did a lot of Iyengar, and it was good for the discipline and for the from a physical point of view, from all the alignment that you learn, and I think that's done me well probably. But in terms of the philosophy and the way that it's taught, it's not my cup of tea.
Okay. Okay. Um, so that's your way into yoga. How did you become a yoga teacher? When did that become, were you like and then were you teaching yoga full time for these past 30 plus years, or were you a householder and balancing yeah, so what does that look like?
Yeah, no, I wasn't teaching full time for 30 years. I was practicing yoga first, like most people, once a week, then twice a week, then 3 times a week, then every day. Then before you know it, yoga's taken over your whole life. You're going to yoga every day. You're going to yoga retreats. You're doing all the workshops. And then it was in 2009, I had an experience, a samadhi type of experience. So up to this point, I'm just practicing asana.
Yeah.
Even pranayama wasn't really, I didn't really get it that much. So it was pure asana, like most people. And then I had an experience in shavasana, an experience a little bit like what I described with the sound healing before, like that dropping away. And I was in a really
Yeah.
bad state. I had a lot of problems in that particular time. So, and I wasn't trying to, this is the odd thing about meditation. I wasn't even trying. And we, of course, are always telling students practice and practice every day because it's the continuous practice that matters, not the length. And I've been telling students this forever, and I believe it. But for me, it actually didn't work that way. For me, it happened like that. But I think this is very interesting because when I was writing about the Buddha, and when the Buddha went to the forest and he started doing yoga with the gurus in the forest, and nothing really happened for him. It didn't really work. It didn't give him the answers that he was seeking. And then he kind of said, okay, stuff this. I'm going to sit under the tree and I'm just going to wait and blah, blah. And then it happened. And so it's often interpreted as, oh, yoga did not work. But I think it does work, but it just accumulates. It accumulates, and then you have a revelation of some sort. I think that's how it worked for me. So I didn't
Yeah.
think that I would ever be able to meditate because I was a complete obsessive thinker to the nth degree. I used to suffer a lot from rumination, from anxiety. I didn't know that I was suffering from that because I'd always been like that, and I think a lot of people are. And it's not until that drops away that you go, oh my gosh, I've been carrying all of that. So it was a very important moment. And from that moment on, meditation was my thing. I meditated every day. I was obsessive. I'm a bit extreme. I'm a person that when I do something, I do it 1,000%. So then it was like, oh my gosh, I found this thing. I finally got it. And I was meditating like an hour every morning, an hour every night. Like I was so into it. And then I thought, I've got to teach this. So then I studied how to teach meditation. I didn't study in a particular lineage. I studied in a school that taught all the different types of meditations, which really suited me because I'm not a lineage type of yogi. I like, as you can tell from my books, I like to write about, I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm not like, I'm only going to follow this teacher and this is, I'm that kind of person. So I did that course and then I started teaching meditation before I was teaching asana. So that was my first port of call because to me, I felt that that was the most powerful practice. Not realizing probably at that time that all that asana that I'd been doing for years, 20 years or something, had actually led me to that point. So I think the asana is very important. We often say
Mm-hmm.
in yoga, oh, it's not about asana, blah, blah, which no, it's not, but it's a great portal, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think most people's journeys generally starts with the asanas and then it branches off in many different directions. Um, One thing that I'm really interested and curious about are the yamas and niyamas, and I really enjoy them being the foundations to not only our practice on the mat, but the most important part is just living the yoga, embodying the yoga. What are your thoughts on the yamas and niyamas? How do you incorporate that into your spiritual practice? And do you have any favorite ones?
Ahimsa, I think, is very important. As I said before, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is not my first port of call in my own practice
Yeah.
because for me it is not a text that is written for householders.
Okay.
For example, brahmacharya. You say
Hmm.
that you love the yamas,
Celibacy. Yeah.
but do
Yeah.
you practice celibacy?
No, I try to. No, um, but I try to take it as kind of a conservation of energy.
Yes, yes.
Um,
And that's very good, and that's how it's been interpreted, but that's not how it was intended when it was written. That's my point.
yeah. Yeah.
Therefore, there's nothing wrong with that. That's all good. I'm not knocking it, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying that it is a very strict path to follow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. And I like to, just like in your book, it explores just the different ways of yoga. And even with Buddhism, like I like to explore the different religions as well and just try to find like what resonates with me, applying them to my path, and also trying to see the common thread that is interwoven amongst all these things, whether it's like the different physical styles of yoga practice or the different philosophies of yoga, the different religions, or the different mythology. What's the universal thread, and what is the feeling of that thread? And I think it is um, just that dropping in, that flow, like the deep, still inner stillness, presence, the touching of the divine within.
Yeah. With Patanjali, it's all about stilling the mind. So it's all about concentration.
Hmm.
And concentration, as you know, is extremely difficult. So I guess for me, why am I going to do something that I'm probably never going to be able to attain
Hmm.
as someone who has a lot of difficulty with concentration? So for me, the Buddhist type of meditations are a lot more helpful because I can actually do them. You know,
Okay. Now, how would
so
you describe the Buddhist meditations?
when I say Buddhist, I mean that's a very general term. Mindfulness practice, when you're just noticing everything that's
Hmm.
happening in the present moment. You're not getting attached, you're not making judgments, but you're noticing. So this really works well for my mind and the way that I am. I've had
Hmm. Hmm.
students that find the concentration Patanjali type of meditations better for them. So
Hmm.
it's not about this is better than that. It's about find the thing for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For me, of the yamas and yamas, the one that most resonates with me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and your interpretation of it,
Sure.
is Ishvara Pranidhana. Humble surrender to a faith above you, guiding you on your path. Everything happening for you rather than to you.
Yes. Well, Ishvara is God. Uh,
Having a deep trust.
of course, not everybody believes in God. God is not a word that I use. In America, oh, you're in Canada, aren't you? In America,
Yeah.
they're a lot more liberal about that word. Uh,
Okay.
Yeah, surrendering to, well, I mean, it's like what I was explaining about when you go to the outback. I'm
Mm-hmm.
this, I'm not in control here, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
something much
Mm-hmm.
bigger than me that's been here. I mean, from a practical point of view, you can look at the landscape, the earth, and
Yeah.
Ishvara Pranidhana is even a bigger concept, but it's that similar concept. So surrender
Mm-hmm.
because you're not in control. So you may as
Mm-hmm.
well surrender. It's going with the flow, isn't it?
Yeah, not gripping the wheel, just allowing yourself just to take a breath
Yeah.
and just ride the wave, centered.
Yeah, I think it's a very nurturing concept. I think we need it. I think we need it. I think we need
Mm-hmm.
to know that, all right, this little life of mine and all the anxiety and all the worries and all the stress, it's okay. It's just a small thing. It's not the be all and end all.
Mm-hmm. So you're really into the koshas. Why? What about the koshas draw your spirit to its teachings?
I think it's just a good roadmap to use in asana and in meditation because it takes you through the steps from the outer body, which is, what we call the gross body. You can feel it, it's obvious. You feel your body. Well, for some people, it's not that obvious. Some people don't feel their bodies. So that can take some time. And then you move in to the energetic body, the pranayama kosha, which is where I do most of my work, feeling the prana moving through the chakras, moving through the body, and then learning to direct that prana and taking it where you need it to be to get rid of those mental and physical knots that we all have. And then you go
Mm-hmm.
in a little deeper. So I like this idea of deeper, 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 gradually, step by step. And if you do it on your own, it's better because you're going at your own pace. Because some people need to be in the physical body longer than others. I hang out in the energetic body a long time because that's my thing. And then you
Uh-huh.
go into the mental body, the thoughts and the emotions. You watch the thoughts, you watch the emotions. They're not who you are, but there they are. What are they doing? Going from one to the other. And then you go in a little deeper and you're in the wisdom body. So that's where we want to be, in the wisdom body. If we've got decisions to make, if we're unsure about where we're going on our path, where are we on the hero's journey? Do I go this way? Do I go that way? That's where you want to be, in the wisdom body. So you don't want the ego, which is always separating itself and having all these. You want to be in your wisdom body, and then you sink into, and then you let go, and then I think you're in the world of Ishvara.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speaking of the hero's journey, do you remember a pivotal point on your journey where you felt like an inner calling to step outside your known world, your comfort zone that you were living? What was that, and how did you garner the courage, the faith, the trust just to take a leap, to jump all in? And I'm sure you've done that a few times throughout your life. What's a really notable one
I
that
have
you
done that.
recall?
I have done that quite a few times. I think that's part of my pattern. Um, this is the thing about Dharma, isn't it? We have. This is something that I really like about the Bhagavad Gita. We live in a society, and we have responsibilities. And in some cultures, they're bigger than others. I'm lucky that I live in a culture where there's a fair bit of freedom. No one's told me, no, you can't go and be an artist. No, you can't be. There's a lot of people that think that it's crazy, but no
Uh,
one's told me I can't do it. Well, there are parts in the world where you just wouldn't have those kinds of options due to economics and due to also societal pressures and so forth. So you have that, and then you have your own personal dharma, which sometimes is not in sync. And often it's not in sync. Therefore, to go and live your purpose, as they say, and as what is Joseph, follow your bliss is what Joseph Campbell says. To follow your bliss
yes.
is great, and I've done it many times, but it's hard. A lot of people, I think this is one of the things that I used to talk about a lot in coaching yoga teachers. Yes, of course you can do this, But it's not just because you're following your bliss doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And in fact, a lot of the time it's harder. And a
Hmm.
lot of the time it's much easier to follow societal, what's expected of you. That's a lot
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
don't go into it thinking that it's going to be easy. So I think it does take courage and confidence and all sorts of things, which develops through, I honestly believe it develops through many lifetimes.
Hmm. So was you becoming an author one of those leaps of faith, or was that easy for you to step into as well?
Becoming an author is something that I always, like a lot of people, I always wanted to write. It was just waiting for the right time. So it wasn't a huge leap of faith because before that I was teaching yoga, I was coaching. I mean, I'd done things that were more of a leap of faith. It was more like a continuation of something that was always in me, but it was just waiting for the right moment. And I think
Okay.
COVID was one of those moments because then for me teaching yoga, the joy of it was being with people and the energy, because as I said, I work a lot with energy and it was all about that. So once it
Yeah.
was an online thing, then that all went out the door. So it was a perfect moment really to pivot and to do these other things that that I'd always wanted to do. So it wasn't
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
much of a leap of faith, more of a organic kind of continuation of things that I'd already been doing. But when I was younger, I mean, I've had times in my life where I've had to work in an office and then, go from 5 days to 4 days to 3 days to quitting so that I could go and be a yoga teacher. I did that. I did the same another time with another job, another office job. I left to go and be an artist and travel the world. So I've done it a few times. But there's certainly been times when I've had to go and do things that I didn't want to do for financial reasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was your mindset? Because a lot of people have to do that, and that is a part of many people's journeys. What's your mindset that helps you through those situations on having to work that job that you don't want to do, that is not your bliss, but it's paving the pathway to um, further unwinding that thread, but with patience and time.
Yeah, I think I always framed it in that way that this is not my career, this is not my job, this is just leading me to the thing that I want to do. This is just a So I was always very careful to actually, I never had a career. I never went for promotions or anything like that. It was like, no, this is not my path. I'm doing this because I have to do it because it's helping me do this other thing. And also, I don't want to be a career person because then all my energy will go there and I'll care about that thing. I don't want to
Yeah.
have something that I'm caring about that much because I want my energy to go home and paint or go to my yoga thing or whatever it is. So you need to
Hmm.
conserve your energy. That's why it's so important to understand how to work with energy, from my point of
Hmm.
view. How do you
Uh,
conserve your energy and not let it seep out? And brahmacharya is about that as well. How do you not like waste all that potent creative energy so that you have it for the things that matter to you?
yeah. How did you learn about that, Barbara? How did you learn about that energy?
I think I think through yoga.
Which part of the yoga?
Probably pranayama. Pranayama is really important in learning how to really hone in on your energy, direct it, chakra work, learning how to move prana because you're moving it with the breath.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And so how would the subtle body and your viewpoint of energy, how do those fit together?
they're one of the same for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. But I mean, the more you work with the subtle body, the more it becomes not subtle, you know?
Yeah.
It then becomes obvious. I mean, I can remember years ago moving the breath up and down the spine. I could only feel it probably from my neck to the mid back when I was moving the prana up and down the Sushumna channel. I could only feel it one part of my spine. Whereas now I can feel it all the way up and down the spine and all around the body. So, like anything, you practice, right?
Yeah. How do you personally guide beginners to awareness and understanding of the subtle body?
It's difficult because I think it's something that's going to you. I mean, you just teach people to breathe properly, as in when you inhale, you inflate the body. When you exhale, it comes down, and get them to actually just feel that. And that's a big thing for a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
because no one thinks about it. So just to actually teach that, I think pranayama is great. I mean, what am I saying? Ujjayi breath, I think, is
Yeah.
really good for beginners because you
Yeah.
can hear it and you
Yeah.
can feel it and
Yeah.
it feels great. So I think,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the simple things are often, I don't think you need to do anything too extravagant
Yeah.
for beginners. I think just teaching Ujjayi breath.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I do like teaching Ujjayi. Is there any other pranayama techniques that you like to teach?
I particularly like Brahmari because, as I said, I love sound. And when
The
you do
bees breath?
Brahmari, you hear the vibrations. And then if
Mm-hmm.
you close the ears, you really hear them. And then if you do the eyes and the nose and the mouth as well, it's like it becomes even more. And
Yeah.
because I like sound and vibration, that's one that I love.
Yeah. Simple too. Pretty simple, I feel, for
It
beginners too.
is simple. I don't like
Mm-hmm.
very complicated things in practice because then that
Mm-hmm.
gets the mind going. You don't want to be starting to judge things, right?
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
want to be in the experience.
No, I agree. So, have you always known what is next? Um, what is next? Like sometimes people on the hero's journey, but even before the hero's journey gets a foot, they don't know what's the next spot, where to go. Have you always known what is next? Have there been times where you're not sure what is next? And in those times, what did you do?
No, I don't think I've ever known what is next. The only thing that's been in constant in my life is my art practice. That's the
Okay.
only thing that I've always done and I will always do, and there's no question about that.
Yeah.
Everything else I've fallen in, I feel like I've fallen into, or I've just followed the path.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has happened. I never in a million years thought that I'd be a yoga teacher. Never.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A writer is something that's more akin to my nature because I always been writing and reading. That's been always been part of my life. So that's less out of the box.
Yeah.
Um, but as I said, all these things are really the same at the end of the day. It's all
Mm-hmm.
spiritual practice for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So along this hero's journey of yours, Barbara, what has fear arisen, and how did fear look on your journey, and how have you and continue to overcome it?
Yeah, fear comes whenever you take a chance into the unknown. And I think it's normal and natural. And you want it to be there because if you have fear, you know that it matters. If there's no fear, then it's probably a bit blah. It's probably a bit safe. And that's
Uh-huh.
okay too. We don't want to live our lives in constant fear and anxiety. Well, I don't. Some people jump out of planes and do crazy stuff all the time. They love that adrenaline and they love that. I don't want that. I don't
Uh-huh.
like a lot of stress. I'm not actually very good with stress. I do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work to alleviate stress uh,
Mm-hmm.
and anxiety. I don't want to. I'm a middle path. Like Buddhism, the middle path in Buddhism suits me well because, as I said, my natural nature is quite extreme.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to find equanimity. I don't like to do things that are completely going to stress me out. So little steps. If I have a big dream, I'll do it in little steps, little chunk
Mm-hmm.
here, little chunk, and do it every single day. So writing a book is not an easy feat. But how do I write a book as someone who doesn't want a lot of stress in my life? I write every day, just like I meditate every day, for a little while. And then as soon as it gets like, oh, then I stop. And then I come back the next day and I come back the next day. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the only way that I can do a big thing.
Yeah.
But that's just
Um, yeah. Well, and one tool that you use, and you mentioned a bunch, is Buddhism. And first of all, how would you introduce Buddhism to just a layperson who's not sure what that is? And is like some people identify it as a religion. I don't think it is a religion. I think more of a philosophy. But yeah, how would you define Buddhism? And what is it about Buddhism that really speaks to you and calls you to want to write this book? And just yeah, what do you share in this book?
when I was writing Philosophy on the Mat, my other book, I wanted to actually include Buddhism in there just because after Patanjali, it fits in really nicely in the scheme of things as far as
Hmm.
yoga philosophy goes. Because as I said, the Buddha practiced these kind of very extreme yogic practices. They didn't work for him, and then he went off and discovered his own thing. So it kind of fits in the yoga story, but it's different because, of course, in Buddhism, they have, well, the Buddha came up with a different way of doing things. What I like about Buddhism is, as I just explained, equanimity, the middle way, that calm thing, because that's what I need. And also, I like Buddhist meditations, probably better than yogic meditations in general. That's a generalization because there's lots of yogic meditations that I love as well, mantra and all that
Uh-huh.
stuff. So your original question is how do you explain Buddha?
Yeah, Buddhism.
So I like to tell the story of the Buddha to people that don't understand because that's something that everyone can relate to. You know,
Sure.
you've got this prince who's got everything. So he's an extreme person. He's having an extreme experience. He doesn't have any reality of what's out there in the world. He's never seen death. He's never seen suffering. Everything's done for him, blah, blah. This guy he lives with the king and the queen, his parents, his wife, and he has a child. And then he finally gets to go outside the palace walls and he sees for the first time in his life, and this is in India. So if you've ever been to India, you'll know the shock that he got. He sees poverty and, all this stuff that you still see in India to this day. And he's shocked. And because he's obviously reincarnated from someone who's got a lot of heart and someone who has a lot of compassion, because a lot of people would see that and go, oh, well, I'm going back to my palace, stuff them. But
Yeah.
no, he wants to alleviate, he wants to understand, and he wants to know what this is what life is really about and what can we do about it. So the whole Buddhist path is how do we alleviate suffering or dukkha. And of course there's different levels of suffering. We all suffer. Some people would say, well, I'm not suffering, I'm not, I've got my house and I'm fine. But we all suffer on a mental level. Every time we don't get what we want, we suffer. Every time we're uncomfortable, we suffer. We suffer in these tiny little minute ways when we're not completely perfect with how things are right now, which is very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult. There's always something if you really look in your mind. If you meditate, you'll see it all there. And
Yeah.
of course, there are much bigger, and we all go through sufferings, bigger sufferings in our lives, unfortunately, because people die. Our loved one dies, and we get sick and we get old.
Hmm.
That's suffering, that's dukkha, and we all are going to experience that. So the Buddhist teachings are all about how can we mitigate that? How can we not get caught up in that? Because at the end of the day, so the Buddhists say, the self is an illusion. It does not exist. So why get all caught up in it? So it's a pretty good teaching, and it's the best thing about it is it's helpful. It's helpful. It can help anyone because, as I said, we all suffer.
Yes. And so your book is Buddhism for Yogis. How could Buddhism in particular help yogis?
I think it's just a different viewpoint from what we have in yoga, and it's worth thinking about. I think also,
Uh-huh.
as I mentioned before, the meditations are very useful to teach
Hmm.
because not
Hmm.
all of your students are going to be able to do that, what we talked about before, that concentration, or even the bhakti kind of meditations with a lot of mantras and so forth. That's not going to appeal to everyone. I think Buddhist mindfulness, obviously, which is very popular, it's very popular because it's more accessible. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to know that. I
Hmm.
think it's
Yeah.
also important to know the differences between Buddhism and yoga, because a lot of teachers mention Buddhist things and then will contradict themselves with some yogic teachings, which is actually the opposite of what you've just said. So just having a basic understanding of, oh, that's that and that's that, I think is also important. Also, a
Hmm.
lot of
Hmm.
people are teaching yin yoga these days. Yin yoga is based on Taoism. It's got a lot of similarities to Buddhism, so there's a lot of that kind of talk that I hear in Yin Yoga, which I love. So it's just an education, like everything else that I do. It's to support teachers who might not have the kind of clarity, because unfortunately in yoga teacher trainings you don't get all of this. All you're going to get is the Yoga Sutras and maybe the Bhagavad Gita, and that's it.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
a lot
Hmm.
of teachers out there think that that's it. That's a tiny part of
Yeah.
what's out there. And I
Hmm.
guess the bigger goal is for people to find the thing that suits them.
Yeah, and continuous to stay curious. And one of my curiosities, yeah, led me to Buddha's, the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, um, and also to Jesus, to the teachings of Jesus. And I read a lot of books talking about how Jesus is like the ultimate yogi. Have you come across any of those teachings on your self-inquiry journey? Um, yeah, Jesus and his path and how that relates to yoga and how things that he shares can benefit yogis.
I'm not an expert on Jesus. I grew up, I was born in France and I grew up Catholic, but not practicing Catholic. So
Okay.
Catholicism was just sort of like in the family, but no one practiced it. When my parents first came to Australia, I was 10 years old. They used to have like religious studies in the school that I went to, and so I went to the Catholic section. Uh,
Yeah.
but that's probably the only Christian education I got, and I did my first communion. And my
Hmm.
parents were kind of horrified because my parents are not in any way religious, and I think
Okay.
I've always had that bent in me.
Yeah.
What happened with my Christian with my Christian story is that daylight savings was on the day that I went to do my first communion. And in our household, we'd forgotten, this was before mobile phones, we'd forgotten to change the clock. So I turned up an hour late at the whole ritual. And I think that's the last time that I had anything to do with Christianity. I
Okay, it's interesting.
felt like I was expelled.
Yeah, yeah. That's okay. I'm talking to an author, Michelle Thielen. She's a Christian yogi, and it's kind of an maybe some people like some Christians think yoga is like the devil's work, which is bad. I don't believe that, but it'll be interesting to have her thoughts on this. I was thinking maybe your third book would have been like Jesus and yoga, but in fact, your new book that you're writing on is more about the inner journey. You want to share more about that?
I think, look, I've only just started writing it, so I'm a little bit reluctant to go too much into it in case I change my mind, which
Okay.
happens which happens to me when I write.
Uh-huh.
So at the moment, I want to make this third book a little bit personal to my audience who are yoga teachers and really delve into the inner journey of what it takes to be a yoga teacher. It takes a lot of resilience, takes a lot of staying power, takes lots of faith. And so I thought it would be a nice book for my audience to write. I've also been thinking about writing about Taoism just because because I love yin yoga, but I don't know that there's enough in that. So that's also another idea. I don't know yet, but I'll keep you
Mm-hmm.
posted.
Yeah, I'd be really interested because yeah, Taoism I'm very curious and interested about, and I've kind of delving into that teaching myself and walking that path, and yeah, just trying to stay curious and see like what is the thread amongst all these teachings that is true to them all. Um, so, how have you kept up as a yoga teacher? You've been a yoga teacher for like a long time now. I've been teaching for 10 years. We were talking earlier about like the next book will kind of teach us how to stay keep our longevity as teachers, as inspirers. What have you learned about that? How to keep going, and how do we keep sharing and being of service? Because just as you mentioned, and I believe too, being of service is so important for our growth, our human growth, our spiritual growth, our advancement.
Sure, and it makes us feel good, right?
Hmm.
Um, Look, self-inquiry, meditation, always delving in, trying to remember this is not about you. Meaning, you don't have to be nervous. You are passing on a very old teachings through the generations. You're just one little seed along the way. So, if you're feeling a lot of teachers get this imposter syndrome or get competitive, all that kind of stuff, it's like, it's not about you. I mean it in that sense, that you're being of service, you're passing on the teachings, you don't have to worry about what people think about you because you're giving. I think that's
Hmm.
important. And also you need to keep your own self motivated, right? So
Yeah.
we're lucky that we are in a tradition which is so rich and which we will never be able to completely explore in one lifetime. So you'll never get bored. But that's why yoga philosophy is so important, because if it was just about doing asana, we would have been sick of it a long time ago, right? It'd just be like aerobics or something, you know.
Yeah, and it
Isn't
could be
that?
so much more. Yeah, and that's really what like yoga has become in a lot of the world. It's yoga has become a workout rather than a work in. And I still do believe any yoga where people are moving their bodies in union with their breath, like that's good, and hopefully that'll lead them to a deeper path. But it's not having expectations for those other people. It's just living your journey and inspiring by you pursuing that truth, your personal truth, and um, so much sharing and wisdom you've given us so far, Barbara. Um, but much of this has come to you through various mentors and helpers you've met along the path. You mentioned one earlier, Shervin Boloorian, a sound teacher who's
Shervin
inspired.
Boloorian is a sound healing master. Yeah, he's wonderful. If anyone is into sound healing or wants to learn how to really, like, a lot of people just get bowls and they do it, and that's fine. But if you really
Yeah.
want to learn the science, I mean, it's a whole science on sound.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
very
So
profound.
he's been an inspiration of you. Who else has inspired you on your path? Who were they, and what were your major takeaways you learned from them that you've incorporated into your being?
Oh, so many good teachers. Michael Stone, one of your people in Canada. The late Michael Stone is probably my favorite teacher, and he spoke a lot about Buddhism as well, and
Okay.
and he was a big fan of Patanjali as well. But so much knowledge, like so much knowledge. And the great thing about Michael Stone is you can still all his teachings are on podcast, free to anyone, and he's a wonderful, wonderful teacher. I can't recommend him enough. Beautiful
Hmm.
meditations, beautiful, clear Sangha, question and answers with his students. He does that whole student teacher question time. So huge. I mean, I listen to him to this day. He's on one of my favorite podcasts. It's called Inside the World or something. Hold on, let me have a look so I don't tell you the wrong thing. I'm a bit of a podcast. I have a lot of podcasts.
Okay.
Um, Shows. It's called. Oh, I love Alan Watts. He,
Yeah.
he's an old timer. Oh, so Michael Stone is called Awake in the World. That's the name of his podcast. Totally recommend it to all yogis.
Yeah, I've never heard of Michael Stone or Awaken the World, so I look
Oh,
forward to
He's
learning.
he's Canadian. He
Hmm.
unfortunately passed away a few years ago. Wonderful teacher. You would love him. Um,
Thank you for the recommendation. And you mentioned Alan Watts. What do you like about Alan Watts?
I love his voice. Oh, best voice. And because he's a person a little bit like Joseph Campbell, who has put his fingers in so many pies in terms of around the world and all these different religions and all these, and he just knows so much stuff. And he, like you, what you were saying, as you like to thread things together, I think he's a person who loves to do that as well, and he does it
Hmm.
really well.
Hmm.
Yeah, from the Buddhist tradition, I love a monk called Ajahn Brahm. He's here. He's an
Yeah.
English monk, but he lives in Perth here in WA, in the Western Australia, and he runs a monastery there. I like him because you can find him on YouTube. I like him because he's very funny. He tells like dad's jokes and stuff, and so he has these very, yeah, he comes from the forest tradition, and I just like him as someone fun to listen to because it doesn't all have to be super serious all the time.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Well, thank you for sharing those mentors and kind of light posts for you on your journey. We've been exploring a lot of successes and wins, but you did briefly mention a challenge you experienced in around 2009, and I'm sure there's been challenges on your journey. Um, Through your hero's journey, what would you say has been the biggest challenge you've met on your path, and how have you overcome that to help others, to help and inspire others who are maybe going through challenges in their lives right now?
Grief is the biggest one. Losing a loved one. Losing a
Mm-hmm.
loved one is the biggest grief. And for those people that have lost a child, that's not me, but for those people that have lost a child, I always have so much empathy and for those people because that's so,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of if we're going to have a hierarchy of challenges. But the thing is, everyone copes at their own level. Like some people can have, I know people who have relatively small, what I would consider a small challenge, but to them it's enormous because their
Uh,
nervous system can't cope with it. So it's not so much about the, you know what I mean? Like we don't want to get into this race of, oh, this is worse, I have it worse and you have
yeah,
it.
you can't compare people's
Yeah.
traumas.
So
Yeah,
you
they.
need, yeah. So you need to look after your nervous system. It's really important that you understand how the nervous system works. And this is what we
Mm,
teach in yoga, so that you can, if you are a very sensitive person and your nerves are really on edge, as a lot of people are more and more, because we live in such a toxic kind of world with so many things grabbing our attention and our mind is all over the place and that affects the nervous system. So really try to learn to, and it's becoming harder and harder with technology and all the things. And you're seeing it in younger people, like very. That's why we get all these empaths, and it's not that great to be all that sensitive for your nervous. Like you suffer more. So learn about the nervous system, learn about breath work, learn how to meditate. Find a meditation that's, for some people that means moving, walking meditation if you're very anxious. Find something that's really going to help you because I think it is becoming harder for people. I think there is less resilience in the world than there was, or at least in the Western world.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. One thing that has helped me through my various challenges and challenges has been love. Love from other people, friends, family, community, and also very important, like love for myself. What have you learned about love on your journey, Barbara? What does that word mean to you?
Yes, I think self love is very important and loving. I think it's a challenge for me. It's a challenge for me to yeah, the heart chakra. opens and closes, opens and closes. In fact, all my art is about the heart chakra, or the art that I'm doing at the moment, which tells you that that's what I need to work on, because there's this sense of there's not enough equanimity in my love.
Okay.
I'm choosy about who I love, which is not what
Uh,
love is. And I'm
yeah.
so for me, I'm not going to give you any grand thing about love, because I'm definitely still in kindergarten when it comes to universal love. I think it's easy
Uh,
to love our loved ones. It's easy to love,
yeah.
well, for me, it's easy to love my friends and my family. I have a loving family. I'm lucky. There's no big issues there. Um, but there are people in the world that I find extremely difficult to love. Who I,
Uh, and the opportunity for us all is to learn how to lean a little bit more into that. Um, love our enemies and
yeah,
not let them steal our peace.
yeah, and I think that's very much a Buddhist teaching anyway. The Buddha teaching is that we're all interconnected. So if you love yourself, then you're going to love everyone else, because
Compassion.
because everyone else is yourself. So
Yeah, and
so that's what I that's what we all need to remember. And that people's actions, the people that we really dislike and find difficult to love, their actions are only a result of their experience. And that's,
yes,
if you remember that, if you can remember that every time someone is really awful, it's difficult. With some people's
yeah,
behavior, it's really difficult. But if you remember that they're just, as human beings, we are kind of like prisoners to our experiences, our
yeah.
psychology. So if we can understand our psychology, which Buddhism and yoga helps with, meditation in particular, if we can understand why we react the way we react, why we behave the way we behave, then we can change it. But it's a long path to do that, and it's a lot of
hmm
practice.
Well, compassion to yourself on that path, and when we have compassion for ourselves getting there, um, we'll be able to have compassion for those wrongdoers we meet on the path. You've shared so much wisdom on this episode, on this conversation. I have a final two last questions to ask you, and this first one is a big one. Through all the highs and lows that has been your life journey, what have you found to be the greatest life lesson you've learned on your path that you feel called right now, just in this moment, to share with me and anyone tuning in?
The biggest life lesson is this is only one life. You don't have to do everything now. There are many, many lives. So chill out, slow down, enjoy what you're doing, and don't feel like you have to do all of the things. This only works for people that subscribe to reincarnation. If you don't subscribe to reincarnation, then then you're probably going to be running around doing all of the things.
Well, you can still cultivate that relaxation, that chill out, the patience, and I feel like when we attune to those frequencies, it ripples. It creates ripples that opens the world and doors beyond our knowing.
Yeah, yeah. Slowing down. I
Um,
think the lesson that I haven't learned, that I'm still learning, apart from
yeah,
the love we've spoken about, more love, more compassion for self and others. But another one for me is patience. Patience. Yeah, I'm very impatient.
and that's okay. Love your impatience.
Yeah, thank you.
The final question, we examined your past, your present. Let's go into the future. Let's go into the future, many years down the road, along an 85-year-old Barbara Courtille. Who is that 85-year-old woman? Where are you? Who you're surrounded by? What is the legacy you've left in your 85 years here in this reality? And what are the predominant feelings in your being?
I hope that I'm still, at 85, I'm still practicing yoga every day.
Uh,
I'm painting every day. I have connections with people every day. I'm healthy. Those are the most important things to me.
How does that feel energetically?
Very soothing, yeah, it makes me feel grounded. Because
Oh, I
those are the things that matter to me. So you want the things that matter to you to be there as long as possible.
uh, uh, I invite you just for a moment, just to close your eyes and connect with your breath, and just lean into those feelings that will still be in abundance, even more so as your 85-year-old self. That deep groundedness, the community, compassion, growth, yoga practice, and just feel how that would feel to be that 85-year-old Barbara. Embody her in your present moment now. And then I'll bring you back. I'll bring you back. And that 85-year-old Barbara, she whispers current day Barbara a message. What does she share with you in your ear?
Keep going.
Hmm. Wise advice for us all. Well, thank you so much, Barbara. It's been a really pleasure and honor to chat with you. I'm excited to continue to delve deeper and explore your books, Philosophy on the Mat, and the newest one, Buddhism for Yogis, which I just got in the mail yesterday. I read the first intro and chapter, and I'm just excited to delve more into the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths, and just expand my understanding of Buddhism and how I could apply that to my life as a yogi. Any last closing words?
Thank you so much for having me. Keep in touch. I'd love to know what you think of the book and whether you have any questions about it or anything else. It's nice to connect with other teachers. Yoga teachers are my favorite people. So don't be a stranger.
Absolutely, and I'll make sure to write a review. Anyone else there listening, do that as well. For people wanting to connect with you, they could find you on your website, barbaracourtille.com, BarbaraCurtille, or you're on Instagram at Barbara_Courtille_yoga. Thank you so much. To close every episode, a digital fist bump, a stepping into the winner circle. Boom. Thank you so much, Barbara. Wishing you a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.